And then, Suzuki Satoru, Guildmaster of Ainz, was face to face with Elim. Jester. I thought you had escaped, but here you are again. Have you come to swear your loyalty to me? But, that equipment. His first sentence made Suzuki Satoru narrow his eyes. There was no need to speak to him. Getting the first spell in would be wiser. However, he could inflict spell damage at any time, but he ought to do what he could only do now. Of course, there was no telling if that would bear fruit. However, he had to give it a try, however faint the chance. Suzuki Satoru shouted. This time. Let us have a real battle. Until one of us dies. Bring it, Dragon Lord. Fufu ha 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 ha. In contrast to Elim, who was laughing merrily, Ainz took a stance as though to show off his crystal. Is it the source of your confidence? I will not let you flee again. A thin, membranous substance expanded and seemed to cover the entire mountain. It was massive, and looked to have an area measured in kilometers. While he did not know its official name, Suzuki Satoru knew its effects. It was a teleportation blocking barrier. It was the first wild magic spell that the brightness Dragon Lord had used. In other words, things had gone as he had anticipated. However, it would be troublesome if it only looked the same, but was something else entirely. Suzuki Satoru gave an order with a silent message, and then shouted. What have you done? You said you wanted a battle to the death, did you not? Then we cannot have you fleeing like last time. Suzuki Satoru cast a spell through the crystal. It was an extremely wasteful way of using it, but it was a necessary action at this stage. The spell he cast was a white magic, Shark Cyclone. Normally, one could not store enhanced spells inside a spell crystal, but white magic was an exception. A tornado 100 meters wide and 200 meters tall appeared. A black hurricane that churned up the land separated the two of them. Elim began to move. His vision was blocked by the tornado, and he could not see Elim. However, Suzuki Satoru's undead sensing ability picked up a massive undead reaction behind the tornado. Before Elim thought to break through the tornado, Suzuki Satoru charged in first. He's not wary or trying to evade. Which side is he on? The shape swimming through the wildly blowing winds as though they were swimming through the ocean were 6-meter-long sharks, which were gnawing at the zombies and chewing them to bits. However, it was insignificant compared to Elim's massive body. Just entering the tornado had gotten rid of a few zombies which made up its exterior, but that was all. There were countless zombies on the surface of Elim's body alone. Given the massive size difference between both parties, Elim planned to easily break through the tornado, at the cost of a small number of zombies. The gigantic Elim would probably regard this tornado spell as meaningless resistance. One could say that was why he had chosen the spell, but there was one thing he wanted to verify. Suzuki Satoru began to think fast. Why had Elim chosen to charge through the tornado? And when he found his answer, his response was, I see. He had wondered if that was the case while wearing the ring, but now it was all clear. Dragons typically had excellent eyesight. Sometimes, they could tell what was happening even when a dust storm blocked their vision. Therefore, he did not actually need to charge into the tornado. All he had to do was deploy zombies from his feet and attack from safety behind the tornado. Surely there was no reason for the arrogant Elim to personally close the distance. In that case, why had he chosen to break through? The answer was because much like undead's slave sight, he had to rely on the zombies' eyesight when seeing through their eyes. Perhaps the zombies that made up its eyes were magical beasts with exceptional powers of vision, but they had lost various abilities after becoming zombies. Therefore, they had become zombies whose vision was only slightly above average, and so Elim hidden within the zombies would not be able to see through the tornado. Of course, he could not conclude that it was not seeing through the zombies on its wings or its legs. But from Elim's movements, the way it moved its head to lock onto targets, it was more likely that it was using the zombies in its head specifically, in the eye region. In that case, he had a move readied for it in advance. Suzuki Satoru took the guild weapon from his inventory and hurled it out. Go forth, Staff of Ainz. Initiate automatic interception mode. The staff obeyed the order and began moving on its own. At the same time, Suzuki Satoru used his ace in the hole. It was a trump card that only a player with the job class of Eclipse could use. The name of this trump card was the goal of all life is death. The clock foretelling death appeared behind Suzuki Satoru, and then he cast a mighty spell on Elim, as the latter drew close, through the tornado. As though it were another Suzuki Satoru, the staff selected the most appropriate spell. The staff was socketed with 7 divine class gemstones, with the elemental alignments of sun, moon, earth, fire, wind, water, and time, with the ability to use each of the spells sealed within each jewel. It began with a spell from the fire gem. It was the divine area of effect attack spell Firestorm. The magical blaze consumed Elim's head. The undead making up its eyes were destroyed, and zombies crawled out from within to take their place. Of course, he had already anticipated this. All he needed was to blind Elim for a moment. At the same time, Elim's legs slowed down by a hair, probably because it could not see. That was an unexpected bonus. Suzuki Satoru and the staff moved out of Elim's path, taking care not to get trampled, as the latter charged over and cast their spells. A gigantic magic circle appeared around Suzuki Satoru. This implied that he was casting a super tier spell. Suzuki Satoru used the cash item he had taken out, and truncated its casting time. And then, what came forth was tribute to the Black Bounty, the Yashub Nigurath. What seemed like a black breeze blew past him. And indeed, the tornado just now had been raising gusts, not this spell. However, both of them were fundamentally different. The dark breath had no physical effect, and at the same time it was not something that could be stopped by physical means. The super tier spell tribute to the Black Bounty, the Yashub Nigurath, was not a particularly scary spell. The reason was because all it did was inflict an instant death effect, and it was useless against the undead, golems, and other beings which had no life. While it was effective against living players and enemies, it was hard to imagine anyone on Suzuki Satoru's level not having immunity to instant death. Indeed, it was a quaint little spell, which only had an instant death effect. However, with the aid of the Eclipse class's skill, this spell suddenly transformed into a vicious, terrible magic. The clock floating behind Suzuki Satoru's back beat 12 o'clock, and as the spell cast, its hands began moving. Meanwhile, Suzuki Satoru had already begun his preparations for the next step. He would not give Elim any time to strategize. This was the moment of truth. If he allowed Elim to raise his defense by even a little, or if tribute to the Black Bounty, the Yashub Nigurath, was disrupted, then it would spell defeat for Suzuki Satoru. Certainly, he could have cast Time Stop. However, Time Stop had been ineffective against the Brightness Dragon Lord which he had fought before, which meant that it was very likely that it would also be useless against the Dragon Lord Elim's original body. However, it ought to be effective against the zombies surrounding Elim. If those zombies had the same defensive strength as Elim, then his first round of attack spells would have been ineffective, and he would not have been able to defeat so many zombies. In other words, they were not equipped with magic items. Equipped magic items added their abilities to their wearers, and had the same resistances as them. For instance, consider the necklace Suzuki Satoru had on, and if it were on the ground. Well, they both had the same durability, the one on the ground would be more easily destroyed. In other words, given the present circumstances, Elim's defenses did not apply to his zombies. They were not equipment, more like dominated undead clinging to his body. In other words, the zombies were just zombies. If he cast Time Stop, it ought to be effective against the zombie mass, even if it was not effective against Elim himself. That would make them a prison for Elim, who would be sealed inside them. While he felt that it was an effective attack method, there was one thing about it which made him uneasy. Namely, where had the Brightness Dragon Lord's Time Stop resistance come from? All of Suzuki Satoru's Time Stop resistance came from his gear. However, the Brightness Dragon Lord did not look like the sort who used equipment. Did that mean it had innate resistance to it? It would be fine if that were all. The question was whether said resistance could be applied to others, as though it were a defensive spell. Of course, even if it could cast a spell like that, it would not be wasted if he could force his opponent to play a card. However, it would be troublesome if that ability worked against his trump card as well. That was why Suzuki Satoru did not cast Time Stop. Instead, he cast another spell. His first objective was to buy time. It would be bad if his opponent ignored everything and strengthened its defense, so he had to confuse his opponent. He did not think that his opponent, as one of the undead, would lose his cool, but if he could use a variety of attacks to make it forget about defending itself, all would be well. At the same time, he dismissed Shark Cyclone. He did not know if his timing was perfect, but Suzuki Satoru discovered a dog zombie, which had been staying behind Elim all this time. It was far behind it, at a distance where he would not have been able to see if not for the keen vision he had gained after becoming undead. Armageddon evil. Darkness gathered around Suzuki Satoru and formed a swirling vortex.